The whole idea here is to increase your air awareness. When you grew up, water was just water. And then you discovered filtered water, and now that hose water does taste kind of plasticky, and that restaurant water tastes a little chlorine-y. So now just with your taste buds, you're able to navigate water for yourself. If you take 5 people, you go outside and we ask everybody what the temperature is right now, everybody's gonna guess within a few degrees of each other because we have temperature sensors in our skin. You go in the desert versus the rainforest, you can feel dry air. I now can go into a room and tell you what the CO2 is within a very small window of accuracy because I've calibrated my own internal biosensors against data.
What's up, guys? Special announcement. We're going to be giving one of you a rebounder from Bellicon at the end of this month. All you have to do for a chance to win a rebounder is subscribe to this channel below. We'll be announcing the winner at the end of September. Subscribe for a chance to win.
Michael Feldstein, thank you for...
You can do Michael.
Miguelito.
We'll take it.
Mikey.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in.
Mikey can work.
I heard you say a thing on Greenfield's podcast that I liked. And it was when we talk a lot about the food that we eat, but not so much about the act of eating. We talk a lot about the water that we drink or the fluids that we drink, but not about so much the act of drinking. And then with breathing, it's the inverse, where we talk a lot about breathing. And I'm even creating a breathing program. There's a lot of programs out there and books and all that stuff. But there's not so much conversation about the actual quality of the air that is being breathed. Mm-hmm. And that's why you're here.
Let's talk about it.
What the hell are we breathing? I've heard you say also that throughout a span of a week, we are breathing on average about a full credit card of microplastics.
That's what pretty credible studies have shown.
WTF.
Every single week. And it's pretty funny, man. Like, to think that, like, I find it kind of comical because I also really care about what I eat. I really care about what I drink. I used to not as much. And then I'm like, wait, what are we doing here? Who am I to be kind of preaching and practicing the air game when I wasn't, moving and drinking water and eating properly? But I do find it pretty fascinating how much people are freaking out over microplastics in water and just like all the stuff that they're getting in water. They're breathing 2 liters of water a day. They're breathing between 10 and 20,000 liters of air per day. But because water is in and out also. Yeah. Like it's not as immediate as air. And part of my mission here is to bridge the gap between air awareness, water, and food awareness. And if we don't if we don't do something to get more air aware, the carbon dioxide is only going up. Air right now is on a pretty bad trend the last couple decades.
Why?
It's hard to say. Forest fires are definitely a massive contributor to that. And if you look at it, it's like it's a horrible loop because forest fires really pollute the air, especially when you have thousands of homes, every single chemical in the home, the paint, the cars burning. And then because those trees are no longer there, the ground, people don't realize, but trees are also shade for the ground. And the more the ground heats up, the hotter the air gets. So it's this horrible loop. It's like higher temperatures equals drier air and more fires. And then the fires burn more trees, and it's like a pretty bad loop. So the trees are a big part of it. I don't know that we're making more things out of, I don't know that the manufacturing component is any worse now than it was a decade ago, but we're definitely cutting down a lot of trees. A lot of trees are getting burned. A lot of things are getting created. A lot of cars are driving on the road. So it's just, we're polluting the air a lot faster than we're allowing it to clean itself. So, yeah.
And we're removing the natural air filters.
Trees.
Being trees and wildlife and the rainforest and all of that stuff. It's like the lungs of the planet. We're kind of cutting that stuff out.
Something I really find fascinating is people don't realize, but air is like 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, 0.4% CO2. And then the rest is like argon, helium, and a bunch of other little gases. Yeah. The cool thing is when we exhale, it's closer to like 4 or 4.5% CO2. But my whole life, I always thought 100% oxygen in, 100% CO2 out. Yeah, right. Like they always just said, we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out CO2, and trees do the opposite. And when I found out that it's like zero, we do breathe in CO2 also, but even when we're breathing it out, it's still like sub 5%. Yeah, right. Just kind of like,
yeah, it's just
an unknown thing.
It's the famous ones. Something else I heard you mention that I thought was interesting, and something that I kind of think about and reflect on in various different ways. Even the concept of inside and outside is kind of a novel concept. You know, so like our homes are becoming more and more efficient at concealing that which is outside the home. And then inside of the home, we have all of these different PFAs and microplastics and all these different compounds and paints and stuff, invisible particulates that are floating throughout the air. And then we cook, and all of the particulates from the food goes up into the air. And if you're using some nonstick pan, there's going to be some stuff from that that's going up in the air. And like, what is the composition of what we're actually breathing inside of our home, and why does it matter?
So with indoor, we basically got two overall buckets. We have indoor air pollution and outdoor air pollution. Outdoor is your allergens, your pollen, your mold, the rubber from, you know, everybody, your tires eventually get worn out, but like, where does the rubber go? It doesn't seem to be on the road. Air, like almost everything ends up in the air.
That's
so
interesting.
Outside, you know, you got cooking, you got the bounce sheets that your neighbor's using in their dryer. You got the factories, the restaurants, depending where people are in a very rural area, farms get sprayed a ton, golf courses get sprayed a ton. So you're kind of at the mercy of like what everybody else is putting into the outside air. So outdoor air pollution doesn't necessarily mean naturally occurring. It's naturally occurring or whatever people are putting into the air. Then indoor, cooking is by far the biggest pollutant, followed by cleaning chemicals, personal care products, and then off-gassing in your home. Like,
What if the cooking smells good? What about like bacon?
it's a good one. So
So nice.
it is a good smell.
It's a good vibe.
And you would think it is, yeah, it's very,
The vibe is good.
it's kind of like dogs. It's like a man best friend, you know, the vibe of a dog is also great man best friend, like cuddly buddy, but like not so good for your air.
Right.
So these are trade-offs. When it comes to things like bacon, I mean, definitely certain foods pollute more than others. And it's not like if we just cook, let's say we have a grass-fed, grass-finished, super high-quality steak with like tallow or avocado oil, something that's good. The problem is when you take super high heat and protein, it creates PAH, which is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. This is the same thing that when we were testing homes after big wildfire smoke, this is the same chemical that was released from the burning of homes. So it's not exactly like just the meat or the bacon that you're breathing. There's other things that you cannot smell that you're breathing, like PAH.
What's the effect of these things? Does it matter?
It's hard to know. Like even with that microplastic study, a lot of it seems like it's like inflammation based, and it's like very hard to pinpoint like microplastic in air. Like if we broadly research it, you're gonna hear like cancer and inflammation and stuff. But I think that
You think it'll make the frogs gay?
I don't know. What do you think? I'm not sure. I have very little experience with frogs.
That was a specific type of pesticide, I think is what
Really?
it was. Yeah, and makes frogs go hermaphroditic. Makes them kind of
Hey, I mean, it's possible.
yeah. That's a suggestion of that. There's some effects like that happening with people as well through exposure to pesticides and plastics and things of the like, and affecting for a big part of the plastic conversation is affecting fertility. And
Yes.
a part of that is like the suggestion is that we're going towards closer and closer to infertility, which would be
Yes.
like walking population off of a cliff.
Yes, I definitely believe this to be true. And with cooking, if you eat bacon, it ends up in your digestive system, which is really good at breaking down food, you know, pulling out the nutrients that you need, dumping out the rest. But when that goes into your respiratory system by inhalation, you don't have your digestive system at play. So that's when it irritates your airways and it impacts respiratory stuff. Like asthmatics get really impacted, and I mean they get more exasperated than most, but broadly it's just like food is great in your digestive system. So let's say you're cooking meat outside on a campfire, probably the way it was intended to go down, and then you're doing it indoor, you're trapping all that smoke and particulate inside. It's not great for your airways. Also, it then gets embedded in carpets, furniture, clothing, insulation, your pillowcase. So I mean bacon on the pillowcase seems like it might be like really wholesome.
Yeah.
But ultimately having all of that food particulate and chemical off-gassing embedded in your home, all the air problems become a surface problem. Same thing like dust, right? Dust doesn't exist outside. Dust is indoors. It's an indoor problem that gets created. Like you'll never see dust outside.
Whoa. I never thought of that.
And dust is not. Let's like if you.
Why isn't there any dust outside?
Because
mine.
Yeah, there's no dust outside. And dust, if you see dust on like your countertop, it did not come from the countertop. It came from the air.
So that's all like skin particles and poop and stuff like that.
Skin, dead hair cells.
A lot of tears for me, I think.
A lot of insect parts.
Yeah.
So if we measure the air, it's kind of gross, but like it's very unlikely that you ever take a breath that doesn't have a shitload of insect parts in it. Because there's so many bugs that we can't see, that bugs just get like obliterated, and the parts are so light. These little fragments are just like.
Oh,
in
why
our air.
isn't there dust outside?
A few reasons. Because the world's best air purifier is nature. It's the UV light from the sun. It's the hydroxyl radicals from the wind. You know, you got rain. Like outside is really good at cleaning stuff up. But when we build these little airtight boxes, which by the way, I had my CO2 detector when I was in here the other week. It's not great in here. Not horrible. Not quite like evacuate the building level, but outdoor carbon dioxide is 400, and here we were like a little bit over 1,000.
Interesting. And what about, well, it means to be a separate tangential subject, but what about breathing CO2 as something, one, increased CO2 increases or supports in liberating oxygen from your red blood cells? And so I wonder with that, of like the conversation of like too much CO2 being bad for you, it also... not have enough CO2 is also quite bad for you. So like, do you know about that conversation?
Not a ton.
Okay. Then maybe we don't need to go down that, but that's something, because it seems like CO2 bad, but then also like developing a tolerance to CO2 and building that up within your bloodstream is actually incredibly supportive.
My like air instincts tell me that there's truth in that.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I have pretty solid air instincts, and I feel that there is truth in that.
Yeah.
Like I was
compared to like breathing oxygen, like exogenous oxygen. Well, I guess it's all exogenous, but breathing oxygen from like the outside, or sorry, not from the outside. It's all from the outside, but breathing from like a tank, like pure oxygen is what I mean. That could end up making you actually less efficient at liberating oxygen from your own blood cells.
My air impulses, air intuition tells me that it feels like it's something similar to like the hyperbaric chamber or like training at altitude. Like training at altitude, good, but I was with Eric Hinman in Denver.
Yeah, Libert.
And we were looking at the CO2 in the gym he was training at, and it was off the charts high. And I'm like, training in this, maybe I can't say that it's good or bad.
Yeah, right.
But when you're actually competing and you're submitting your scores for the CrossFit quarterfinals or whatever, I definitely would not compete. I would not do my, like when you want to have your peak performance, I think that would be a good time to have low CO2 and high oxygen. But potentially training in a situation with high oxygen or high altitude. I mean, I wonder how much of the whole high altitude conversation is that we have lower oxygen versus increased CO2. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a combination.
But
yeah. Anyways, continue. Sorry, I got you sidetracked.
Where were we?
Talking about
inside, outside, cooking.
Inside, outside stuff. Why there isn't dust outside? Difference between outside versus inside.
Yeah, inside's crazy. Like I always say, the best thing someone could do for air quality is like move to Vancouver Island or Costa Rica. But for everybody else, we kind of have to deal with the urban environments that we live within. And yeah, since about the 70s, there's been a lot of bylaws and regulation and preferences towards environmental efficiency. That's why somebody with an old home could sometimes be a little bit more moldy, but the CO2 is usually very low and they typically breathe very well. So usually the moldiness is not because of an airflow issue. It's because there's like an old leak that didn't get addressed at some point in time. So yeah, the energy efficiency is basically like the tighter you seal up a home, the more energy efficient you make a home broadly, unless we're talking like serious custom home, the less environmentally healthy it is because the tighter the box, the more we left outside out.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
And like, yeah, I haven't looked it up yet, but I would like to. Like, when did the word outside get invented?
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine going back like 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and trying to tell somebody what outside meant.
So what are the implications of excessive domestication, like airtight domestication? What are the effects of this? Why does it matter outside of, polysyllabic chemicals and stuff that we're breathing? Like, does it matter? And for what reason?
So I'll speak to like There's the chronic long-term stuff, and then there's like the acute short-term stuff. So, and I consider myself like a street engineer more than like an official scientist. I like very anecdotal stuff, like real life experimentation. So a few things. Number one, we're actually doing a sleep study right now. So we sent almost 100 people Jaspers, and we said, and a huge percentage of them were using Aura. So we just decided to like just focus on Aura people for the data consistency.
Yeah.
So we had them do 1 week, no Jaspr. Week 2 and 3, Jaspr. Everybody's on week 2 right now. And then week 4, no Jaspr. So in the first 3 or 4 days of Jaspr in bedroom, people's sleep, like we've already been getting a lot of stuff like this, but now we were doing it in a consolidated attempt with a lot of data coming in. People are hitting their best sleep scores ever. They're getting their HRV numbers are improving through the roof. Like quantifiably, their metrics are great. And then they're also just like, holy shit, I've woken up with phlegm or like a runny nose for months. It hasn't been happening.
What would you contribute that to? Would that be that they're not breathing in some particulate matter that's causing inflammation, that's
I do think that
having some deep systemic effect throughout the night?
I think
like saturating into their cells in an invisible way, but then it manifests as visible.
So if I had my particle counter here and we did an air test, so it's a little laser and it will detect how many particles per size are in this room. So let's say between 0.3 microns, super tiny, can't see it, up to like 10. Let's say about 800,000 is like a fairly normal indoor number. This is not great. If we then put an air filtration system in that room for about 45 minutes, that's going to be reduced by like 90 to 95%.
Wow.
So when we start looking at that, we're looking at pollen and mold and allergens and dust mites. And dust is not usually the problem, but dust is the perfect vessel for other things to hitch a ride on. So like often when you're sampling air, you have two choices. You can sample the air or you can sample the dust. Dust is the best way to actually test the air quality because dust is an air problem. Another way is like actually testing the dust right off your furnace filter. So yeah, if somebody has a mold allergy or just goes from breathing a bunch of mold every day and every night or allergies to not breathing it, their sleep is going to improve. On the cognitive standpoint, I won't even quote a study because there's infinity of them. If you just type in like air quality and then like fertility or performance or sleep, it's just endless.
Yeah, it's big on fertility, I've read.
I saw one that was like grandmaster chess players making game theory optimal moves and SAT scores based on air quality. Huge impact. Big companies who started to test it, it tracks to absenteeism. So the way you would think about if you take a high performance, whatever, athlete, let's just say, and you feed them the best diet, high quality water and food, and then you give them horrible food, usually the same stuff that you're seeing in food and water translates to air pretty well. It's just like you give yourself crappy fuel, you tend to not perform as well.
Yeah.
But specifically in the home, the sleep one is probably at the top of the impact situation. So when we test carpets and bedding and stuff, often we'll find more pollen indoors than we do outside because the pollen comes inside via air and now it's just embedded throughout your house and then it can't get back out.
Yeah.
It's stuck in all your porous materials. And honestly, like I created Jaspr, man, specifically for wildfire smoke. I never thought in a million years I'd be talking to people about sleep and allergies and wellness and performance. It was not the intention, and I'm grateful that it happened. But when you, just basically, it's the allergies, I would say, is the thing that surprised me most. So people who have struggled, and like we live in Austin, people talk about allergies here. Like it's a thing. Like,
people leave the city.
They leave.
For a couple months because of the...
cedar fever?
The cedar thing.
And like, yeah, it's not just the cedars. There's
I've never been bothered by it. What's the difference between someone gets bothered by stuff like that and somebody that doesn't? Does it mean I'm like...
It's just some people are allergic to some stuff and other people aren't. But the amount of people who have gone from debilitating seasonal allergies to no allergies whatsoever is shocking. So we're doing our sleep study right now, but in Austin in the spring, winter, spring, I'm going to do the same study again with people in Austin, specifically for seasonal allergies. And the best analogy I have for this is I think our bodies are incredible at dealing with stress in spurts, but I think 24 hours a day we get really beat down. So if somebody goes, like humans spend 95% of our time indoors. That's just like a broad number in the West. It's probably a little bit lower down here and a little bit higher in cold places, but let's just call it 90% to be safe. So if you're breathing in allergens and pollen and mold and everything, when you go outside and inside and in your bedroom 24 hours a day, and then you remove that, so now you're sleeping in your bedroom at night and you're in your clean air sanctuary, breathing in super fresh, clean air. You're not breathing in mold. You're not breathing in allergies. Like sleep is when we recover. Probably way more about this than me, but the muscles, the memory consolidation, all the benefits, all the things that happen when we sleep.
Yeah.
And if we're being bombarded by the allergens and the mold and the toxins and the cooking particulate and the chemicals and the off-gassing, our body's in that like defense mode all night long. And then we just get beat down. Then you flip that. All of a sudden, you have a clean air sanctuary in your bedroom and clean air throughout your house. Then you can go outside. You can tolerate several hours a day of getting hit by pollen, because I love the like this cup analogy that Ben Azadi uses a lot. It's like if the stress bucket is at the top and we add more water to it, overflows. But like sleeping with clean air is draining that bucket.
Yeah, it's the same with like the bioelectric conversation with like radiation and whatnot, EMFs and all that. Like if you are in a high rise for 45 minutes with a cell phone strapped to your whatever, it's not that big a deal as long as you're contrasting that with taking a walk in the woods,
Right.
or jumping in a pond or jumping in a pool or something like, ideally, a salt filtered pool. But it's having that discharge, that opportunity for discharge that makes it more okay. So it's like it could even be a hermetic stress or stress that actually makes you a little bit stronger, exposing you to like, oh my God, radiation.
Yeah. I don't think the goal is to avoid all of this
but
stuff.
then going through the process of rest. Whereas if you are constantly being radiated while you're sleeping, or constantly being bombarded by all these different particulates that might not be so supportive for you 100% of the time, eventually your system will become exhausted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was my long-winded answer for...
That's such an interesting thing. I don't know that I've thought of that way. Like the density of the particulate in the air. Would there be... Like the visual of that to me is actually like quite striking, especially when you consider, what is it, you say 20,000 liters of air that we're consuming?
Depends on the person. I like to say 10 to 20 because everyone has different respiratory rates.
Yeah,
when
a baby probably a little bit less.
Let's call it, let's call it 15,000.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
How many pounds of air is that each day? I've
looked it up before.
I've heard the number before. I don't remember what it is. Somebody can look it up.
It's in the
if you're
pounds.
watching on YouTube.
It's in the pounds of carbon dioxide for sure.
Yeah.
It's in the pounds.
Yeah.
Which is like quite a lot of mass.
It's a lot more mass of air than food that goes into our body each day as far as weight, which is pretty interesting. And when you're sitting inside of a room, we just think of it as just being, it's just air. Air is air is air.
We don't even think about
it. You can't see it. Unless you can visibly see stuff, then you're like, okay, that's the thing. But you're saying it's, what was the microns you said? Or what's the terminology for that?
So, when we measure air,
8,000?
800,000.
800,000. That's
like
normal.
Total particulates floating in the room.
Okay. And then with going through the process of throwing the Jaspr air filter in there, I'd imagine whatever setting, put it on whatever setting.
I like fan speed too.
Okay. And then what will happen to that 800,000 microns of particulate within, did you say an hour?
Yeah, 30 to 45 minutes will be definitely reduced by 90%, if not more.
Interesting.
I mean, the smaller the bedroom, the lower the ceilings, more effective.
And then on the other side of that is just what? What is the air then?
More air, just air. It's just like
It's
water,
just
right?
oxygen. It's just the actual.
It's like spring water is what we want, and when we add
So how do we revivify the air itself? Because the air that we breathe beside an ocean or beside a river or a place of that sort is also like healthier air.
Yeah.
So how do we now step it up again and say, okay, cool, it's just air? Is there a difference between the qualities of air outside of particulate?
I don't know. I would say that the ocean, whether it's like electrostatic charged or
can we do like some ionization of this air now?
Or the humidity, it's hard to say exactly the benefits. I know exactly what you mean. Or like after a lightning and a rainstorm. That's because now the air is getting like extra additives to it from the environment, which is great for us.
I want to put the air on steroids. We cleaned up the bullshit. Now how do we get it on steroids?
What do you do for your water?
What do I do?
What's the? I'm just trying to like draw to like analogies.
You throw some minerals in there. Yeah, you structure it, get it circulated. That's the answer. Is get the air moving.
Get the air moving. Yeah, I would say that because I I wish Jaspr could remove CO2 from the air. It can't. You need ventilation, which is cracked windows and stuff like that, and venting stuff out. I think the way that we're improving our air is by bringing
the outside inside,
sharing it with trees.
Yeah, bringing more plants into your house.
And when you, when I've tested CO2 in dense forest areas, so the general outdoor CO2 is 400, but if I'm like in a dense forest, it could be like 370, 380. So like there's actually noticeably better air amongst the trees. It's like even if it's a shady day, like when you walk through a bunch of trees, you can feel a freshness, you can feel a coolness.
Yeah. They actually sell like air. Well, it's on some air filter. I think like air ionizers.
I'm not a fan.
Okay, why?
I'm not a fan.
Why?
So almost every ionizer,
bullshit?
UV light, I put them in the bullshit category.
Oh, really?
Yeah, big time.
Son of a gun.
It's the reason we don't have any things like that. A UV light would literally be like a $7 feature for us to add. It's not like we don't have it because it would be expensive to add.
Yeah.
So UV light, a couple things. Number one, it typically creates ozone, O3, which could then be damaging for our lungs. I like my UV straight from the sun. That's my favorite way to get it.
And the ozone's also sterilizing.
It is, and it charges the air.
Yeah.
So when I used to do wildfire restoration and a house would smell like smoke, or like if a car would get smoky, we would run a heavy-duty ozonator in that environment to remove the odors. However, there's very strict rules when you use ozone. We would have to get all plants, animals, and people out of the house, including fish, and we would have to, depending on how much ozone we put into the air, there'd be a dissipation period. So let's say we ran the ozonator for like 12 hours or 24 hours. We would then need to let the air sit for an equal period of time to let the ozone dissipate. So it's one of those things where like, it's awesome, has like, it's like you don't want to eat soap, but it does clean bacteria.
Yeah.
So ozone is really good as like a short-term cleaning of the air, but it's not something that you want to be using.
Or disinfecting instruments or wounds or things of the sort.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I believe in breathing pure air. So there's a reason, whether it's like NASA or space stations or surgical operating rooms, they all use HEPA, and they didn't get fancy with it.
They also have, did you see that NASA study that broke down like the top 10
plant
oxygenating plants? Yeah, like snake plants were on there. There's a bunch of different very common standard house plants that you could see.
So unfortunately, I used to quote that study.
That bullshit too?
I dug a little deeper.
God dang it.
So
everything I thought I knew.
No one's ever been able to recreate that study. I haven't tried to the full extent, but I've tried putting all kinds of plants into very small spaces and then measuring the air with commercial instruments, and I've never seen any movement at all. I think it's kind of like, the problem is it's just not enough. So obviously plants are awesome for air, no doubt about it. But in order for you to have enough plants in an indoor environment to move the needle, you would literally need like trees in your house, which would then give you like pests and humidity issues. So I put plants kind of in the dog category.
I feel like I'm like plugging my ears. I'm like, I feel like this is like you telling me Santa Claus isn't real.
No.
Don't tell me plants won't have a positive effect.
No, I think they do. I think that whether it's air or water or food or life stuff, I think it's all just various types of stress.
Yeah.
And I do believe being indoors with plants
but actually
is a
like
positive thing.
Substantially to move the needle with the air quality.
It doesn't decrease
throwing
CO2.
A snake plant in the
It
corner of
doesn't.
your room isn't going to be like, the needle will not be that moved by that.
It's like trying to
But maybe
heat
if
your
you
house.
got like 20 of them,
maybe
they
20,
could start getting into the realm of
maybe
impact.
50.
Maybe 50.
But then
of
it's
them.
like what I then would want to see is like, what's how many pests are in our house?
Yeah.
Is there mold in the soil?
I mean, when you walk into a greenhouse, it's so nice.
But
like
I don't.
the quality of the air. It's
But
like,
greenhouses are also designed to like have crazy ventilation.
for sure, it's incredible.
So I think if you want to develop your house like a greenhouse
gonna
with
be a
like
big deal.
incredible ventilation,
What do you think about opening your windows compared to keeping windows closed and having an air filter?
so this is a complex one.
Obviously, it's very different if you're in like Harlem compared to Vancouver.
It's also different if it's wildfire smoky or
Yeah.
if it's a pollen day,
Yeah.
cold, hot, cold, because here,
Yeah.
we don't crack our windows much in the summertime here. Like I'm already cooking with my windows shut here in Austin right now.
Sure.
So I think cracked windows are like an essential thing to do. And there's a few like I like to give people tips that they can implement today for free that will be actionable to improve their indoor environment. So ventilation is mandatory.
Yeah.
Cracking windows is one way to have ventilation. Another way is running your vents. Vents at home would be typically bathroom fans, range hoods.
What if you're in an apartment and you're running your vents and you're circulating the particulate garbage from 600 units?
So some apartments and condo
A lot of
units,
diarrhea particles coming through from unit
From everybody?
465. Yeah.
So some buildings have dedicated HVAC systems, so it's more like a house and you don't share air. Other ones do have some centralization.
Yeah.
Typically, buildings kind of suck for air.
Gotta be.
They kind of suck.
Gotta be bad.
There are condos. Typically, it's the ones that people own, and they have their dedicated HVAC units, and it's more like a little house in the sky. But apartments, especially like a lot of them where like the air conditioning turns on a certain date and then the heat flips over at the other part of the year, it sucks. It's not maintained properly. Same thing with hotels, schools, office buildings. They almost never have windows that open because they're trying to really control that heating and cooling bill.
Yeah.
So the byproduct of that is like you're trapped indoors. So with a building, yeah, cracking doors and windows. And the other thing is with range hoods. So everybody should take a tissue, hold it up to the range hood above your stove. And step one is see if that thing is, if that thing doesn't grab that tissue at least an inch or two away, your range hood is not pulling. And then if you hold it up there, it should grab it. It should give you like a tight suction. Number two is check where your range hood even vents. Half the time, it's venting either just in the cabinet above, in a drywall cavity, or in your attic. It's not even venting outside. And then three, when you can, if you're boiling stuff, like it's kind of annoying to use the back burners, but especially when you're boiling, if you can use the back burners instead of your front burners.
Why boiling?
Well, it's less annoying if you have a pot of food just kind of passively cooking there versus like you're actively skilleting or walking stuff.
Oh,
From a convenience standpoint,
Okay, I
the
get
front burner is more convenient,
I get it.
but the back burner, it's more underneath the range hood. So let's say you're capturing like 80% of particles in the back burner and like 50 in the front. So it's just like those small little adjustments, like make sure your range hood, because if cooking is the biggest pollutant in a home, and then your range hood is the way you're supposed to get that out of the house, making sure your range hood works and actually using it is like pretty good low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And same thing with the bathroom fan. Make sure that thing vents outside. Take a tissue, hold it up to your bathroom fan. If it's not pulling air, that fan's not working.
And probably check your filters throughout your house every now and again, I'd imagine.
Like your furnace filter?
All of them, but for the ventilation, all that stuff, I'd imagine there's probably a lot of
So
crummy.
I have 5 Jaspers in my house, and when we checked our furnace filter a year later, it's still pristine.
Wow.
So furnace filters are just like the name says. It's a filter for your furnace.
Yeah.
So it's designed to keep your furnace safe. It's not an air filter. So yeah, generally changing your furnace filter like quarterly, seasonally is a good practice.
What is the hierarchy of air filters for the house? What is the price point for the Jaspr? I have a Jaspr. I'm a big fan of it personally.
Where is yours?
Presently, it's actually my podcast studio at my house.
Okay.
Yeah. So what's the difference between an air doctor? What's the difference between a HEPA filter? Is that like a generic concept? HEPA is just an acronym.
HEPA is a standard high efficiency particulate air.
Yeah.
And it means that the filter has to filter at least 99.97% of particles
Okay.
at 0.3 microns. However, it's kind of bullshit. So HEPA is a great standard. That's a great metric. Here's the problem with HEPA. There is no standard of the airflow that you must test the machine. So a lot of companies, you'll see they have these like bold claims. We filter 99.99999% or whatever. Then if you dig deep and you get the lab data, I saw a company that manufactured filters that had these really bold claims for filters. CFM means cubic foot per minute, and it'll be a perfect segue into the difference between most machines, but it's like how much air do you actually move? So this machine Jaspr, for example, Jaspr peaks out at about 430 CFM, but at fan speed 1, it's still about 100 to 120 CFM, which is a big deal because theoretically, 99% of the time, your air purifier is running on fan speed 1. Everybody publishes their specs on max CFM.
Yeah, sure.
But what I want to know is what's your fan speed at your lowest setting, because that's the setting it's going to be at most of the time. So I saw a company who their lab testing was done at 4 CFM. So if we blow gently enough, a Kleenex could be HEPA. So HEPA is not a material, it's a standard. But unfortunately, I think that there should be regulations that says, hey, a HEPA test must be done at the speed that the filter is going to be used at. Because if the higher the air is passing through it, the less efficient the filter is because the air is, moving through very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the tricky one about HEPA. Also, you'll see a lot of companies using terms like ultra HEPA, super HEPA, hyper HEPA. All that means is it's not actually HEPA standard. So they just, if you call it something that isn't just HEPA, you're able to kind of dance around the standards. So the differences between most air purifiers.
Yeah, like what's like the hierarchy? Like what's my baseline entering in? I have $135 to spend. I'm like low income, but I care about my air quality. That might be like open a window, get a fan, circulate air.
Okay, that's a good way
plants.
to think about it, actually.
Yeah.
That's a good way to think about
So
it.
like baseline, bro, I'm in college. I'm 22 years old. I'm an athlete. I have no money.
Okay.
And then building up to like Cadillac, money is no issue.
Yep.
I'm a professional athlete. My health is the absolute most important thing. What's that look like?
That's great. I like that framing.
Yeah.
So I would say source, sometimes we deal with the source, sometimes we treat the symptom. So it's like if your water's polluted, you can't really dig a new well or like connect to a new city line. So we don't fix, unless you're ordering spring water, you're not going to fix the source of your water. You're going to treat the water and filter the water as it comes into your house.
Correct.
When it comes to air, it is also very difficult to handle at the source level because it just comes in from outside.
Yeah.
So your air source is something you won't treat. Also, air is a lot sneakier than water. Water just comes in through a pipe. So you can just filter just your shower, just your tap, just your fridge, or you could get like a whole home water filter. But
That's a good point. You're inundated with the air hitting you from all angles.
it's coming in through your...
like bukkake.
I had no experience with that one. All angles. So, where were we?
I don't know.
So,
Yeah, you know where we were. We're going through the hierarchy.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So air is sneaky, right? It comes in through your attic, through your vents, through the walls, the doors. There's not like a singular air pipe. So, which is why you ideally need to think about filtering air in like a decentralized way. So what does college bro do who cares about his health, but he doesn't really have a big budget? So going back to source. So I would say if you can not, looking into better cleaning products is a really big deal. So like
reduce the particulate or the quality of the particulates.
Just like
within
pollute
the
your air
house
less.
from the source.
So like
That's good.
don't use sunscreen aerosol, anything that's like aerosolized cans.
Oh, bro.
You shouldn't use any of
tell me
those
about
things.
Ugh.
No sunscreen sprays.
Ugh.
Definitely not in the house.
Bro, the sunscreen sprays are so bad.
It's crazy when you
It's
see
so-
someone use it on like
so
a beach,
offensive.
30 feet away, you smell it.
Oh, anybody does that within like a 30-foot radius. I'm just like, oh, I'm just so offended.
I want to create
I'm
like,
not mad at the person. I'm more just like compassionate. But I'm just like, bro.
so I've been thinking about creating like a little like business card or a flyer about like sunscreen air awareness that I could just like give to people.
Yeah.
I feel like just like shouting at everybody
gross.
is not going to be my...
How could something be that noxious in nature and not be horrendous for your body? Just, I mean, it's just like 30 feet away. I'm like, oh, it's like I'm like being punched in the face by this.
I think
would just
trusting your
assume-
smell is like the ultimate...
Yeah, just intuitively. I'm like, come on, bro.
And like, at what point what do you do for water now?
Good question. I have a Aqua True, and then I also do spring water on occasion. So when the spring water runs out, I'll go to Aqua True.
What about when you go to like a restaurant?
I'm not that picky, to be honest. I don't really give a shit. I'll usually get like if there's a choice, I'll get bottled water in glass. I like sparkling water a lot. The suggestion is the CO2 bubbles make you kind of calm down and chill out and whatnot. But usually glass water bottle would be the main thing that I care about. If I could do spring water, I'll always do spring water. To me, that would be like the creme de la creme is just spring water, glass bottle, whatever
agree.
iteration of that.
We are aligned.
Yeah.
So when you, but have you had an experience where like you go to a restaurant and they don't have an option and you take the tap water and it kind of tastes like crappy chemicals?
It's like dehydrating.
And like you could taste it.
Yeah.
It tastes bad.
Yeah, there's definitely that version of that. And I think there is something to not being like so precious, and no SIBOing yourself into like, oh, like, come on, bro. You're also a very robust organism.
I have a term I like to call, like, I call it relax hard. I don't know what I'm going to do with
relax hard.
Relax hard.
I love that.
I got RLXHRD.com.
I like that we go straight from bukkake to relax hard.
Yeah, in that order.
I like this flow.
So I think that works. I like to use the word in two ways. Number one is like kind of like work hard, play hard, relax hard, but also
like deep rest. I was taking it a different way. I was thinking hard, like surface, like density.
No, more
I
like
get it.
Like relax hard. But then the other side of it is kind of like making fun at people, like who, if they don't get their 3 saunas in, their 5 breath works, or 2 cold plunges, the coffee enema, 3 red lights, a couple journals, they're friggin' mad stressed out over the perfectionist routine. Yeah. And that's when you need, like, guys, that's just a new form of stress you just brought into your environment.
Yeah. Or just a hobby. It just becomes noise, like the whole health racket. It's fine. You could also build train sets, you know, or do puzzles or whatever, but like your thing is health hacks. Yeah. It's fine.
So, you know, using better cleaning products, whatever, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
Not wearing shoes inside is huge because
interesting.
95% of shoes tested do test positive for poo, fecal matter.
Oh, wow.
Also, almost 100% of shoes tested test positive for glyphosate. It's like we walk on grass is sprayed, we come in our house, we walk on the carpet, then we clean that carpet, we walk on it, we lie on it, we aerosolize it.
How interesting.
It's just like a really low-hanging fruit.
Wow.
People don't like this one so much, but not having your dog in your bed. And if you do, brush the dog, wash your dog's paws when your dog comes in. Like nobody would ever take a blanket, go outside, rub it on the grass, rub it on the trees, rub it on another dog's butt, and then shake it out in their bed. But their dog is effectively doing that.
What about the benefits of the bacteria that a dog brings into the house, and like the reduction in allergies, and you know, just like I would presume, and I believe there's data around that of actually bolstering or supporting the immune system, and specifically allergies is something that I have at least heard and I believe read. I don't remember the source exactly, but my I think, you know, somebody could look it up.
Yeah,
dogs in-house reduce allergies in kids.
I've never seen that before, but I mean,
maybe
anything's possible. I'm happy to like, that would be a cool thing to look at. I've definitely seen.
Because what dogs do is they expose you to the outside. They go outside, they grab the outside, they bring the outside inside.
Yeah, I could see that there's some benefits, but then the downside of the pet dander, and just like there's so much fur and pet dander in the air that it's just adding so much to you're just adding it into your air. You're just breathing in so much of that. And then, like I said, the glyphosate, the poo and all that. So I personally think that the downsides outweigh the upsides, the positives. But I think if someone like is grooming their dog a little bit, like just taking care of your dog and washing the paws a little bit. Depends on what your dog's
running through. If your
and how are they like are they a blanket?
Yeah.
Or not? So it's not black and white.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, what are they running through? Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think the broke college student dealing with sore stuff, making sure the range hood works, using their bathroom fan for a couple hours after they shower, so all that humidity and chlorine is getting vented out and not staying in their place.
Maybe getting a shower filter.
Shower filters are good.
There's not chlorine.
They work well.
Yeah, being humidified into your room.
Cracking windows when you use your dishwasher. Dishwasher's like the one off-gassing pollutant thing in your house that doesn't vent outside.
Probably avoid steam rooms that don't have a filter, if that exists. If you have like a membership over at the wherever, and you do hit the steam room, and you're just blasting chlorine vapor into your lungs. It seems like suspicious to me.
It does. Yeah. And shaving cream from Russian man shaving his testicles.
Nice.
Like that tends to just
nice.
Like that is that is a very common one.
I like that. All right. So what's next? Or what is there any more low hanging
there is
free broke college students?
Yeah. So like getting your vent stuff going better. Like I said, that's your venting stuff, your source stuff. And then if you want effective, you could get an effective air purifier. In fact, you could make your own effective air purifier for fairly cheap. The trade-off is, so like, it depends what one wants to trade off. You know, let's say, so Jaspr's $9.99. Fun fact, it used to be $2,000. Then we got it to $1,400 last year. And then last year we got it down to $9.99. And if you look at an air purifier that's like $200-300, typically they are very small and ineffective.
Yeah.
But you can get one for, let's say, $400 or $500 that's very effective. The downside is it's large and it's ugly and it's loud. So it's like, if you want something that's effective and pretty, that's when you got to pay the money. But if someone is willing to have something that's loud and ugly and the eyesore doesn't really bother them, then honestly, like DIY air purifiers can work better than most.
Did you smoke weed in high school?
I did.
Middle school? You ever did the DIY weed purifier so you could smoke weed and your parents don't find out?
Like a bounce tube?
Yeah, you get.
What'd you guys use?
I would put it in a like a paper towel roll.
Yeah.
And then I'd fill that with dryer sheets.
Yeah.
And then you blow the smoke through there. You know that one? You know
I
that
do.
trick?
We called them bounce tubes.
Oh, okay. So
I grew up in Canada, so the terminology is a little bit different.
Okay, so is that the standard?
I actually, if I knew when I became a mold restoration guy, if only I could have brought back that understanding back to my high school days, it would have been very effective. So what I would recommend for somebody who wants to smoke weed at home and not get caught, I would recommend getting a snail fan, like a restoration style fan, and venting that out your window. So the best way to deal with it wouldn't actually be the
just
bounce
straight
tube,
out.
because I'm like, I feel like the bounce tubes, there was some inhalation occurring as well.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I never inhaled.
No?
No, I'm just joking. That's a Bill Clinton reference. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like those little $200 air purifiers. The way I like to think about those is generally it's like trying to heat your bathtub with a kettle.
Yeah, right.
So kettles are great for heating air, but if you try to heat your bathtub with a kettle, you can't, because the water is cooling down faster than it's heating up.
Yeah. So maybe if you live in like a 400 square foot little studio,
Like a dorm or something?
yeah, you might be
Especially if you're willing
to.
to run your small, cheap air purifier at full speed all the time.
Yeah.
On fan speed 1, a small air purifier is going to do almost nothing.
Yeah.
So moving up the chain, that hierarchy, so some of the things that you're paying for, so like as you go up, you're going to get more airflow. So a bigger fan, bigger motor. That's usually where most of the money goes into the machine, is a bigger filter, a bigger fan, a bigger motor, and then aesthetics. So like Jaspr's made out of steel instead of plastic. It has commercial.
It's very beautiful.
It matters too, man.
Yeah. Like you actually, I mean, I like having it out. It's
Yeah.
like additive to the house. My house is all white as well, so it's like it fits very well.
So that was kind of the thought process. It's like it had to be steel. So like when I look back, there's a little Excel sheet that I made 8 years ago when I started to develop Jaspr. I'm like, what annoys me about most air purifiers, why it matters, and then what I'm going to do about it. And I love looking back at it because I'm like, oh, we exactly did that. So I hated loud machines, because especially like a cheap little fan. Like now we decreased the air pollution, but we increased the noise pollution. That bothered me. A bunch of little blue lights at nighttime that you can't turn off. Now we got the light pollution. The tiny little motor and fan, so they're not effective. No sensors, so it can't adapt to your environment in real time. That's another problem. So you want something that's quiet all the time, but can automatically ramp up when you're cooking, if there's wildfire smoke in real time. Steel instead of plastic. So a lot of people don't know this, but when you manufacture anything that's plastic, for every 1 ton of plastic, it puts 3 tons of carbon in the atmosphere. So like if everyone in the world bought 5 plastic air purifiers, we would be polluting the outside at such a level that it would be even a net negative, even indoors.
Whoa.
And then a plastic air purifier there's a reason why they have a 1-year warranty, because they don't last very long. The reason, like Jaspers are built to last like 25, 30 years.
Jesus.
That's why we were able to do a lifetime warranty, because it's steel. Like I made a commercial grade product, but in a form factor that was pretty and quiet. So, you could either get something that's loud and ugly and effective, or cheap and small and ineffective. And, once you get up into that like $700, $800, $900, $1,000 range, that's when you can have something that's effective and beautiful and quiet and no bullshit in terms of maintenance and service and things like that. So Air Doctor, you asked about them. So their Air Doctor 5500 is actually awesome at cleaning the air. It's very comparable to Jaspr.
What's the price point on that?
$9.99. Same
Okay,
price.
similar.
So
what's the difference between, without just like shitting on Air Doctor, which it sounds like you're already not, which I really appreciate and respect very much.
Yeah.
Because typically that's like the case in every situation.
Dude, I would rather somebody buy something's better than
Just
nothing.
get something.
Something's better than nothing.
I can say Jasper is very beautiful. And it sounds like from
works
what you're
great.
saying, like the quality. So what are the qualitative differences? Because I honestly have it both an Air Doctor and a Jaspr in my house, and so I'm genuinely curious just for myself.
Okay, so the smaller, cheaper Air Doctors are a little too small to get the job done. So one of those would be, I wouldn't put that in anything more than a small bedroom, and I would be running it on full speed because it's just a little bit too small to get the job done.
Okay.
The Air Doctor 5500, which is their big unit, which is $999, is very good at cleaning the air. And the sensor is pretty good too. It adapts to the environment quite well. The big downsides with that are a few. So number one, Jaspr has a 360-degree metal. It takes in the air from 360 degrees. Air Doctor has two sides that it brings the air in. So they say that you need to keep it a foot from the wall in all directions because you've put it against a wall. Now only one side is pulling in air. So, and like a foot from each side in a lot of spaces ends up putting it in the middle of your room. So it's very obtrusive in terms of its positioning. It's like a bright white plastic with a big logo. So the aesthetic is honestly a huge part of it.
Yeah.
It's just like when I brought it home to test it, my wife was like, when are you going to get that? She thought it was an air conditioner.
Yeah. Jaspr looks like a little like piece of art.
It had to. Like,
Yeah, it's like actually, it's literally, it's for me, it's nice to look, and I like circles and such. So to me, like it being circular instead of kind of looking like an air conditioning.
perfect. Next point, it's the cylinder.
Yeah.
So the most important thing with a filter is surface area. We need a good powered fan and motor, and then we need adequate airflow. So a cylinder allows for a lot more surface area than a flat two-dimensional rectangular or square filter. There's just not very much exterior facing surface area. So that's a big deal. And then having to not put it against the wall is annoying. So most people do put their Jaspr against a wall or in the corner. It can kind of tuck in against a wall, and that's totally cool. Also, they ask you to vacuum your filter every month. So if you had 4 Air Doctors, that would be 48 vacuums a year, sorry. It's like 50 times a year where you have to like get it out and clean it. And vacuuming could actually arguably damage the filter.
I've never vacuumed mine. I probably need to sort that out.
And then they have 3 different filters. So you got your carbon filter, you got your HEPA filter, you got your pre-filter. So you're changing a lot of filters all the time.
Yeah.
We just made one filter, a 3-in-1. So you just change it twice a year. So all the things that I mentioned are like aesthetic and, simplicity. We wanted to make one product. Also, like because we don't make water filters and diffusers and air purifiers or other products, we only have one product. So when you only do one thing, you could do it really, really, really well. If we had even multiple models of air purifier, like so much goes into engineering and testing, little tiny details that no one even realizes. If we even had 2 models of air purifiers, our quality would start dropping dramatically. Our service, our support, our maintenance, our warranties would really fall off a cliff. If you just do one thing, you could do it so good.
That's great.
So that's been our advantage, is not getting, shiny object syndrome. People always ask us, make an air sensor, make a whole home filter. What about water? And I'm like, nah, guys, there's a lot of companies that make a lot of stuff. We're just going to do one thing really well. So yeah, their machine works good. It's just the aesthetic and the user experience that, like, you could buy a kettle at Walmart for $19, or you could get one at Restoration Hardware or West Elm for like $79 or $119. And it's like some people would rather it be made out of metal instead of plastic, and they'd rather something that looks beautiful on their countertop instead of looks crappy.
Right.
So it's kind of like functional art. It's supposed to look good in your house, because I've been to a lot of people's homes where their air purifiers are unplugged and put in the closet.
Yeah, sure.
And that was sort of, like I said, my background before was floods, fires, hurricanes, natural disasters, and stuff like that. So we would use these giant, loud industrial air scrubbers in people's homes. So my vision was to create an industrial air scrubber, but quiet and pretty. So I'd go to people's homes that had sick kids and all kinds of horrible air after a fire, a flood, or mold, and their air scrubbers would be unplugged. And they'd be like, and I'd be like, why'd you guys unplug it? Your air is really contaminated. And they're like, I know, but it's so loud and ugly.
Sucks.
Like, it was just really stressing me out, the constant noise of the fan. So I'm like, oh, okay. If we're creating a noise problem, we're not actually creating a solution for people. So I like addition by subtraction. So I want to take the shit out of my air, take the shit out of my water. And if we're introducing bright lights and sounds and polluting the outside, I just don't feel good about that.
Yeah. We got to wrap up. Is there anything else that would be that we haven't touched on in relation to air quality, in relation to contaminants and pollutants, in relation to things that perhaps a person could do to better their internal filtration mechanism? Like, is there supplements that we could take to support our own lungs and maybe some of the contaminants that we might have already been breathing for a while? Is there anything like that you're interested in?
I'm not personally like a good detox expert, so there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
I don't have that protocol, but what I would say is the whole idea here is to increase your air awareness. You know, when you grew up, water was just water. And then you discovered filtered water, and now like that hose water does taste kind of plasticky, and that restaurant water tastes a little chlorine-y. So now just with your taste buds, you're able to, you know, navigate water for yourself. If you take 5 people, you go outside and we ask everybody what the temperature is right now, everybody's going to guess within a few degrees of each other because we have temperature sensors in our skin. If we go in the desert versus the rainforest, you can feel dry air. So I now can go into a room and to tell you what the CO2 is within a very small window of accuracy because I've calibrated my own internal biosensors against data.
Yeah.
So when someone is able to increase their air awareness and you start smelling what polluted air is, I say there's one downside of having a Jaspr, it makes you an air snob. So if you start breathing super clean air and then you go in hotels, Airbnbs, or a friend's house, other people's air can feel dusty, heavy, and difficult to breathe, which is kind of annoying.
It's kind of like a scientific way of describing like the vibe of a house. You know what I mean? Like when you walk into a house and it's like,
you know, the feeling of stuffy?
Like cigarette. Yeah, it's like feels stuffy.
Stuffy means
there.
high CO2.
Right.
It's simple. Like once you've learned that, for me, I'm like, the CO2 is high in here.
Yeah.
But other people might call that
compared to walking
stuffy.
into a house, it's like super well ventilated and there's lots of natural light coming in and there's an air filter.
When people come into my house, they're just like, whoa. Especially during allergy season, people, it's like, our air is pristine.
Yeah.
So I would just, you know, remind people that we are miraculous creatures and you have an ability, whether it's like with water or taste of food, by tapping into like how you feel. I think like doing breath work in a very small space with filtered air and then doing it in a room with unfiltered air is probably the quickest shortcut to increasing your air awareness. So yeah, those are the important things. I mean, we can only cover so much in one given time, but just generally thinking about your air closer to the way you think about your food and think about your water is the main thing I'd like to get across to people.
Thank you so much for making time to do this.
My pleasure, man.
I really appreciate it. I think this is such an important conversation. Then we have...
I got something for your audience.
You guys are doing like a discount for us.
We are. So today, the day that this podcast comes out, so we don't know the exact day, sometime mid-September maybe.
Yeah, it'll probably be early September 2024,
So whatever date that it is today that you see that the episode was released. So today, for the next 7 days, code ALIGN, ALIGN, will be 20% off. Also, on our website, the more Jaspers somebody gets, the bigger the discount gets. So like 2 is 10% off, 3 is 15, 4 is 20. These deals stack. So like, for example, if someone got 4 Jaspers, they would be like $5.99 each. So your code combines with our quantity discounts.
So you get one for family, friends, whatever.
Or like, and like good is 1 Jaspr in your bedroom. That's table stakes.
Yeah.
Better is 1 in your bedroom and 1 in the kitchen living area to take care of cooking particulates. Best is 1 per bedroom and 1 in the living area. But like 1 is going to be a massive difference. If someone could dial in their air where they sleep, those benefits are going to start to compound quickly. So to recap, starting today for the first week, it'll be 20% off. And then after the first week, it'll still be 10% off.
What's the URL?
JASPR, jasper.co.
Cool.
JASPR.co, code ALIGN, 20% off for the first week. And then for anybody who listens past that week, it'll be 10% off forever.
Dope.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
I appreciate you. That's it. That's all. Thank you, opportunity. I'll see you next week.
See y'all.